I really appreciate you listening to the podcast here. Let's go get started. First of all, welcome back. I cannot tell you what a day I had yesterday, just in terms of feeling like y'all are there, and I have never felt so supported. And the thing is, it's not even about me, but I feel like Miss Marianne, and for those of you who are younger than, okay. Anyway, for the old people in the room, there used to be something called Romper Room, and Miss Marianne would look through her special mirror, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, actually. She would look through this little mirror thing, and she would call out the people she saw, and those were the people in the TV. And I feel very similar today because I want to go, oh my God, there's Kim, and there's Sue, and there's Patty, and there's all these other great people that reached out to me, and I just want to, and the hardest thing is that half of you have different names for your Twitter handles. So then I'm like, wait, who was this again? And I had to go back and remember who everybody is based on their Twitter handle, not their name. So anyway, it was a great day. I am so happy to spend this time with you. And I hope you opt in to listen, because I realized I just started assuming people knew who I was. And of course, that's you guys. Most of you do know who I am. And you went through an incredibly difficult time in my life with me, which makes you lifelong friends. I don't know what else to say. You're lifelong friends. For those of you who are new or might be coming to just be fired up for the next 100 days, I need to tell you a little bit about myself. The reason I have a true crime audience is because my dad and my stepmother were murdered by the Golden State Killer. That happened over 40 years ago. He was arrested after 40 years. It was a big deal. When it first happened, it was a big murder in a small town down in Ventura, California. By the time he was arrested, Jojo was arrested, it was an international holy crap event with press parked outside of my house for 3 days. So I'm just saying, it was what a ride. And we had a pandemic just to juice everything and make it all just that much more dystopian. But the deal is, as a human, I've always cared about women and women's rights, and I care about children's rights. Oh my God, I'm like a sucker for kids. I love them. I used to run a preschool. I've had so many jobs. I'm one of those people that just likes doing things, and I forever will throw myself in the middle of whatever activity is going on now, because that's exciting to me and I enjoy it. It fuels me, and I have been unfueled for many years post-trial. It has been a dour time we have all lived through in the last few years. And that's actually why I wanted to do this podcast. So this is really important, because your party affiliation, it does matter to me. I hope to goodness I'm talking to a Vote Blue audience. Oh, I'm touching my microphone. Stop doing that. It does matter to me, and I'm hoping like heck I'm talking to a Vote Blue audience. But if you're not, I still am interested in you joining us, because you need to know the values associated with this podcast. And that is, everybody has a vote, and nobody gets to know what you do with it. You choose to share, but it is private. And that, I remember learning that when I think I was like 6 or 7, and I could not believe it was private, because when you're a kid, nothing's private unless you're lying, dodging, or super crafty. Your life isn't private. And the idea that a vote was private, like you could do whatever you wanted to run the country, to make a decision to run the country, you could literally do whatever you wanted in the voting booth. And I hold that to be one of our greatest rights, is the right to vote in private. So that means you don't have to be influenced by your friends, your neighbors, your family, nothing. You get to do what you got to do. And you can be a poser all you want in real life, but you get to make your own decisions at the ballot box. And that is one reason I want to get people fired up, because that is, as we just watched overnight in Venezuela, this is one of the most precious gifts we have, is our ability to vote. And it feels maybe sometimes abstract or esoteric or worthless, but I will tell you, it absolutely is not. Sure, there are people that are trying to thwart our vote, but right now our vote is still so precious. And if you haven't gone to look at anything that's happening in Venezuela, I watched a video tonight. They've decided they're done with Maduro trying to hold power. And the citizens are rising up, but they're rising up so carefully. And that's the second theme of this podcast. They're rising up together to stand for what's right. Again, they could all have different points of view on what is right, but they know a man hanging on to power when their vote was absolutely not for him is not right. and they're fighting it. So that will fire you up. It's very French Revolution-y, except way more civilized. The video I watched today was of a bakery throwing bread to all the people. It was so cool. It was just like all the people helping each other, and the bread was just mostly celebratory. Like, here's some bread, go. And if you think about it, casting bread on the water, that's something we do in our Jewish traditions. It's something we do in many traditions. So it was a very powerful video. So one of the things is, this podcast will be dedicated to not dragging and not putting people down. I'm not interested in running down other parties. I'm not interested in running down positions. What I am interested in doing is talking about the things that matter to us, and you can decide what matters to you. So I'm going to do my best to not be negative. I might be funny and snarky, but I'm going to try my best to not be negative, because I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of being negative. And then the last thing is that this is about coalition building. And there was a post today, and that was really my topic of the day. But the idea of coalition building doesn't mean you're looking for your perfect pair, the person that believes everything you believe. It feels good when there are people who support your beliefs, and you should find them, because it makes you feel better. It makes you feel like you're not alone. But in this case, in what we're doing with an election and what we're doing in voting, is we're choosing we can say the candidate, but let's get real. The candidate brings their team. And so we are choosing the team, all the people who belong to that candidate's team, including down ballot. And this is really important. This is when you get mad at a president because they're not doing something. It's because their team doesn't have any power. We need to also take the House, and we need to take the Senate if you are interested in these issues and moving forward in our American journey. So again, it is about a coalition. You don't have to believe all the things. You just have to figure out, and I'm going to talk about this. This is actually something I plan to talk about later this week, but you really need to figure out what matters most to you. And so start thinking about it this week. We'll come back to that topic, but this is something Kevin Goffin, he's at GAUGHEN on Twitter. And yeah, I am on Twitter partly because it's so controversial right now, and there's a lot happening on Twitter that really reveals the way this election might be strategically fought. Last night we had the big calls, the women for Kamala and the white dudes for Kamala. And if you wonder about why we're starting off with these race things, it's because each race has some crap they need to acknowledge and move past. And that's been really powerful on these calls. Last night, the women's call, though, was beyond. We've already done that coalition. We've come together as a coalition. Now it's all women, and pretty soon we're going to unite the women and the men. But the idea of having, I forget the number, I think it's nearly 100,000 white men on a call saying they're going to stand for a woman of color. A woman of color. Get that, guys. White men are taking back what it means to be a man, and how it means to be supportive, and how it means to build a coalition. So, okay, let me go back to Kevin's. So this is all about coalition building, and that's what you're seeing. And that's why I'm liking Twitter, because I'm watching this coalition building. But what happened last night is Elon took down the white dudes for Kamala. That's an election interference, and that's going to have its own consequences. But I like keeping track of what's going on. So that's why I'm on Twitter. I'm also on Threads, and I'm also on Facebook at The Lawyer's Daughter. But I do enjoy watching how history is rolling out on Twitter. And I have also followed a lot of high quality journalists, in my opinion, so that I try to get the most truth possible. So Kevin writes, "Dear Democrats, many Americans, myself included, will be voting Democrat for the first time in our lives this November. So if you've been a Democrat your whole life, this is nothing. But if you're part of the crowd that's realizing we're in trouble, and you might have to vote in a way you're not used to, because that's just like a body memory you have to vote Republican, we need to welcome these folks who are holding their nose and coming over. It's important. They should not feel excluded. They should feel welcome." He goes on to say, "We're doing this because we agree with Democrats on policy. We're doing it because we understand the need to stop Trump from destroying our Constitution. If you see us non-Democrat Kamala supporters on Twitter espousing beliefs you disagree with, like on taxes or guns or whatever, try to let it go. Don't be a jerk. Don't disparage and argue expecting us to toe the Democrat line, because we won't." Actually, they are towing the line. They're right at the border of the line. If you look up how that word really works, towing the line really means you're right at the edge and you're ready to jump in. So if you're expecting us to toe the line, we won't. We're not Democrats. Being hostile to us will backfire and endanger our alliance. We've made common cause with you in this election because our democracy faces an existential threat. We agree Trump is dangerous and we want to work with you to defeat him. Let's be grateful for this mutual cooperation. We can go back to arguing and being opponents after November. Until then, we have a country to save. This is the mindset. Welcome. Don't chastise. If you're seeing support, just give it a hug. None of us will ever agree with each other on everything. It's just, that's kind of like what makes this awesome, right? We used to have a radio host in San Francisco, Ron Owens on KGO, back when the station was like a powerhouse, amazing community-oriented station. And he used to talk about being a moderate because his thing was, if there's extremes on the right and the left, generally the answer's somewhere in the middle. And he was a proud moderate. And frankly, I grew up much more liberal, but I kind of end up often, especially economically, in the moderate category. So I'm a civil rights leftist, let's face it, because I just don't step on people, don't be mean to people. But generally, this idea of we're never going to all agree, but we're neighbors together and we shop at the same stores and we drive on the same roads and we go to the same libraries and schools and everything else. So there's got to be a way. We used to be able to somehow have a way of not just hating on each other. So this is the first step. This is today's podcast. Go out there and notice people who are potentially part of the coalition. And for sure on this podcast, you are welcome. If you're just kicking the tires and this is new for you, you're a true crime follower because you've been a law and justice advocate your whole life, there's absolutely room for you and we support you. And frankly, yes, we agree. We are law and order supporters too. We just might want to see some modifications, but I bet if we talk, you might be open to those modifications too. But we don't have to talk about that right now. Let's just go get this election done. And then we all need to become more civically involved. And we'll talk about that more later too. But I'm really excited to share this with you. It's day 99. And you know what? I already screwed up the numbers, which is a classic Jen Carroll. I believe it's actually day 98. But I'm going to just keep my numbering scheme because that's just so me. Anywho, welcome to the podcast. I will come back tomorrow and we're going to talk about how to get started as you. But right now, this is just starting to do I'm bringing all my coaching to this. I also learned how to be a life coach, which if you're laughing, I'm going to smack you. It's really it's almost like a master's degree in interpersonal communication. It was such a good leadership kind of training. So I wanted to bring some of my coaching first to this election for anybody that's listening on the call to just remind us that if we don't take care of ourselves first and really know who we are first in this process, it will be easy to get lost and realize you're arguing or fighting something you don't need to. You just don't need to. We all need to stop fighting everything. It's crazy. It's probably one of the most fun things about the Weird campaign. It's just like enough. We just don't have to be goaded by people being mean. We can just look at it and go, nah. So thank you for listening. I will be back tomorrow. Go forth and make some new friends. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate, and I'll be back with another episode really soon.